All right, there we go. Let's get our Facebook groups going and we can start the show. We've got the wheels spinning here. Hopefully everybody's doing well. There we go. Boom, boom. All right, welcome in, welcome in. It is time for an episode of Building the Broncos for Breakfast for Dinner. I am Nick Kendell, joined by Scott Kennedy. Carl had something come up, so we are dealing with it. Oh my gosh, I got water leaking on me above me here right now. That's not good.
Our pets' heads are falling off.
Oh my gosh, what the heck? All right, well, I am Nick Kendell. That is crazy. We're here talking about the Senior Bowl. And we're gonna make it go as long as we possibly can with the with Scott's internet, and now I guess some sort of leak above me. But how are we doing? How was your first day down there in Mobile? How was practice?
It was good. There was, they got after it a little bit quicker than usual. It seemed like one-on-ones didn't used to start until day 2, but now they get after it a lot sooner, and you can learn a lot about these guys. I like when they get to the installs and seeing the difference between the guys and how they progress from the one-on-ones in day 1 and move on to the 11v11s and see how the linemen progress. Mm-hmm. The quarterback struggled a little bit, and the center quarterback exchange today was brutal. I bet there was 25 drop snaps today. Nick, you've heard me say before, you know, it's so hard to play offense. Watch an all-star game. It takes them a full day just to get the center snap and the cadence correct before people are jumping off sides. It was one of those days when they went to 7v7, 11v11.
Especially true with all the shotgun quick RPO stuff. Like actually, the center quarterback exchange can be rough. I think Dylan Gabriel specifically struggled with some of that exchange today. But, luckily in Broncos country, we're not really watching for quarterback so much. I mean, obviously backup quarterback's up for grabs, but probably not a draft pick. I mean, it's never a bad idea to stock quarterbacks. I think it was Wolf in Green Bay who almost took one every single draft because you never know. It's a good place to be with Broncos country right now. It's also a good place to be with Papa Bear coming in saying, good evening, Broncos country. Let's go, Bo. Let's go, David. Hope you're doing well. It's the off season. We appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us today. We also got Denver Luke 1. He says, I love draft. I love draft too, David.
I love Lamp.
Yeah, Eric texted me the same thing. But good to see you. Yeah, Carl is out today, but appreciate the preemptive 3:36 my time super chat there. So, man, thank you so much for just starting it off when we were way up the tracks there. But appreciate you coming in. We also got Michael Ronquillo coming in. The one, the only, the legend out there in Tucson says, good evening, Nick and Scott on Building the Broncos. Go Bo Broncos. Go Michael. Appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. Hopefully everything's good out there with Walmart and you're, enjoying the off season as much as one can with the unfortunate reality of another Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl. But, here we are. And we have a lot to look forward to here in Broncos country. David Young can come in and also saying, I saw Bo had minor surgery today. So he said no to the Pro Bowl. Yeah, I saw that Drake May got in instead, and Bo was 4th alternate, so he passed it, and it's going to be Drake May instead. Pro Bowls, I mean, Quinn Meinerz turned it down. It's just, I don't know, they might just as well just get rid of it at this point. I mean, if every single one of these players is going to get rid of it, I know it used to be a thing where, they'd use it for contracts and Hall of Fame, but, that was, I think, probably 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
They still use it for 5th-year options, though.
They need to get rid of it. It's done.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's like, okay, well, you made the Pro Bowl. Yeah, 4 other people turned it down because they didn't want to go.
Yeah. Archaic. I don't know. And this is such a violent sport.
There it is. And Chad and I were talking about that today. I'm like, this is the only sport, and it almost feels like something's inherently wrong with it but we're just used to it. This is the only sport that's too dangerous to play. Like you don't even combat sports, you spar, you scrimmage, you have preseason games. It's like, oh no, we're not going to play our stars in preseason games because we're going to get hurt. We don't want to play Pro Bowl games. It's too rough. We don't want to do this. It's the only sport where they're afraid to play it. And it's, so just stop with the charade.
Yep. Got to protect them. And it sounds like Bo will be fine and everything. So that's good to see. We got Chase coming in. So shout out to Scott and Chad giving us some insight at the Senior Bowl. Yeah, we'll talk about that today. Got a mock from William. Says Tyler Warren, Omarion Hampton, Alfred Collins, Andrew Makabu, Tyler Cooper, Jamon Dumas Johnson. You kind of lose me once you get too far down there. But yeah, good draft. I bet you a lot of those guys go earlier than you selected, but you never know, man. We're still 80-something days away from the draft. So it's a lot of fun. We'll probably do a mock draft tomorrow morning as well. Today, we're going to focus on Senior Bowl, though. I see everybody posting their mock drafts in here. A lot of fun.
Nick, I still have our day before the draft or even our day of the draft mock drafts from last year. I've got them saved here.
Okay.
And we had Jared Verse at 22, Bo Nix at 46, and Ladd McConkey at 50 after a trade down or two. That would have been nice.
We would have maybe won the Super Bowl. I mean, it's just like, that's granted, the machines are fun thought exercises and good to go over scenarios, but you have to know, like when you see Broncos country using the PFF mock simulator and they're taking the same guy in the second round every time, it's probably because the board that they're using is a little off, right? Like Nick Manawari, third round for every single mock right now. Jalen Walker, second round every single one. PFF, Trevor Sikkema, PFF, a little lower on those guys. That's okay. Maybe he's right. But we'll see how that plays out. Phil McLaughlin, good evening, Nick and Deacon Scott. So happy we do not need to watch the quarterbacks this year. Did Sanders also sit out today? Buckham. There is no Sanders down there at the Senior Bowl. We have a Sanders at the Shrine Bowl, but he didn't throw. He only went down there for interviews. My understanding would probably be he got some sort of assurances if he's not going to throw and compete that, like, yeah, you don't got to do it. Somebody's going to take you high anyway. I don't know. I'm not going to disparage him for not throwing or whatever. So why didn't he compete? Again, you already competed. The tape is the tape. This Senior Bowl Shrine Bowl shouldn't change that much.
My only question is, did you get paid to go? Did you get paid to do that? Why would you go to the Shrine? Because it was closer, probably. Then if he's not getting paid, then so be it. It's just kind of like this NIL stuff. If you're getting paid, you should play in the bowl game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're probably hurting for too much money out there in the Sanders family. So I don't know if he got paid even just being there brought a lot of attention to the Frisco and the Shrine Bowl. So maybe it was already known and agreed to. Who knows? We got our guy Ernie in the house. Go Broncos country only. Hello, Nick and Falcons fan. Man, Ernie won't even address you. Ernie, we gotta be kind. That's if it be anything in this world, be kind. Good to see you, Greg Smith as well. Good evening, Broncos country. And Eric comes in here. Good to see Eric. He says there was a report Giants, Titans, and Browns reps at Shrine asked him not to practice. Interesting. I wonder where that came from. I see the Chelsea shirt there. Chelsea fan, not Falcons fan. There we go. But yeah, no, we're keeping it rolling here. And you're at the Senior Bowl today. I'm very jealous. I've not had a chance to get down to Mobile yet. Seems like a great time. I've heard great things about the I know you don't partake, but the bar after hours is pretty nuts at Veets down there, which should be.
I'm spending the evenings with you, Nick.
Yeah, that's ooh la la.
I'm spending my evenings in Mobile with you in Broncos country.
Grinding tape for sure. Well, I want to hear your standouts today. I mean, obviously, I've been on Twitter, social media, just trying to find any morsels of information I can find, but I trust your eyes. So people out there today that stood out for you. Cody W says, I'm ready to give me the best running backs for the first day. Yeah. Before we even get there, and Scott, you're down there, so you can say this, but it is really hard to evaluate running backs and linebackers until you're actually in in-game scenarios because the tackling isn't the same. The run fits aren't the same. Linebackers are at a real disadvantage. You can take away some pass catching stuff from the running backs. You can take away some of the space stuff with the linebackers, but it's not real football. They're not thinking about the run fits, the play action. So linebackers or running backs standing out day one, day two. I would take that with a grain of salt versus your one-on-ones in the trenches or your one-on-ones with wide receivers and cornerbacks. And even then, not always real football, but better than linebackers and running backs.
Yeah, it's the hardest. It's the least translatable scouting for linebackers and running backs until you can hit and be hit. You're not learning anything really about them. It's nice to see that if they can catch and their fluidity and stuff, but you're not really learning as much about them until it's time to go and hit. So games are where you have to scout that. And then you want to check out the combine is important for those positions too. Where I really have watched the most so far were the 1v1s on the national team, which is basically the non-SEC teams. And some guys I really liked. Let me hit a couple of names here real quick. Let me bring up my roster again. I don't know them all by heart yet. I know them by numbers now. But the Gray Zabel kid from North Dakota State was probably the best OL I saw on that team today, and he was playing center, which was nice. Yeah. And then I saw someone said they got Jalen Rivers, and I'm not sure where he's supposed to be picked, if that was a typo. He said Jalen Rivers at OT at 29. And I don't know if that was a little bit later, but the kid from Miami, he looked really, really good today. Aeneas Peebles, defensive tackle, I think Virginia Tech, had an awesome first step. And on the other side, a couple of guys, it was just kind of the eye test until I go through all the video I shot. Because, again, I'm watching it through a sun-drenched LCD screen this big for when I'm live at the practices, and then I go through them over and over and over and over again. But Ivy, the big defensive end from Ole Miss, I think looks out there the way Shamar Stewart is supposed to, because Shamar Stewart just doesn't do a whole lot out there. So I keep an eye on Ivy, and then quarterbacks. And we're not looking at quarterbacks too much, but those are still the prima donnas still get a lot of attention. But it was for me, it was Tyler Schaff, the Louisville quarterback. I thought he looked like the best quarterback out there today, him and Riley Leonard.
Interesting. So Tyler Schaff, I believe, Texas Tech to Louisville this season. I think so. So he's an interesting one. He's been a sleeper in this process. So good to see that. And yeah, I see Cody W also coming in and saying best tight end. I'm a little bit, I guess, disappointed with the Shamar Stewart stuff, just because, looks like Tarzan. I don't know if he necessarily plays like Jane, but he's a little tight in his finishing ability, but just, rocked up, body beautiful, but maybe not a good NFL player. I did want to ask, as Cody W comes in here and says, okay, best tight end. How did the tight ends do today? I know that you got Mason Taylor down there from LSU, the nephew of Jason Taylor. I could be wrong. There's either son or nephew. I think maybe even son. You also have not everybody in Broncos country. I'm not a big fan, but Harold Fannin Jr. From Bowling Green, who I think 230, he's so small and not good as a blocker that I'm evaluating him as a wide receiver, and I don't think he's wide receiver athlete. He's out there, though. And then Arroyo from Miami, I think, had a lot of positive buzz today as well.
I thought Arroyo looked really good out there. He had one of the plays of the day, getting behind the defensive back on a corner. It may have been a linebacker, honestly. Sometimes it's hard to tell just quickly looking at him, and you see 15. You're like, okay, that's a safety to me. Oh, no, it's actually a linebacker. Another one that you didn't mention that, we might be a little burned in Broncos country from UCLA tight ends, but, and I'll try and pronounce his name, but Maliki Mataveo he looked big. And I just checked his measurements, 6'5" and a quarter, 265 pounds. And he moved pretty well. And he looked like he could move some guys blocking too. So that was a guy that got my attention too. But Arroyo, I think, was the guy today. Nice. of the ones you mentioned.
Well, good. Yeah, he's kind of a little bit of I think he does enough inline tenacious wise where he can live there. But you're going to love him more as your F tight end, your flex, your second tight end, the more receiving guy with somebody more in line. But he was good after the catch. He's good in the seam. He had a lot of injuries at Miami. I think he's a pretty high recruit, 4-star maybe. But yeah, he's one that could really elevate himself right now. And I think the first two tight ends in this class, I think, are pretty set in Loveland and Warren. Now, who's one, who's two, we'll see. But I think 3 is very much up for grabs. I can't get around Harold Fannin, Scott. I don't know. He's not a really good short area quickness. I think he's very stiff, and he's small, and you have to be such a good athlete to function as a pass-catching tight end that you have to be essentially a wide receiver, and I don't think I see that with him. So Fannin, I don't know. The reps I saw today, not ideal. But did you notice Fannin at all? Maybe that's a negative if you didn't, but he comes in with a lot of love from Broncos country. Sorry about the delay, folks, also. Are you there, Scott? You guys let me know in the chat if it's this
I'm not
delayed.
Sure how much you'll be able to hear me. Denver Luke asked, how did Tez come?
All right, there goes Scott. You guys in the chat, let us know. It could just be the internet there at the Senior Bowl. You guys let us know. Is it Scott? Scott's gone, not me. Okay, cool. We're good. It was Scott's internet. So yeah, no, not a good day from Harold Fannin. I did want to give a shout out to, again, Elijah Arroyo. I'm glad he gave out a shout out to Peebles as well. And Gray Zabel. I think he's one that maybe we could have a little bit of a early discussion about the center position. Center to me for Denver is a spot that it's fine. It's filled fine adequately entering this season, but we need a little bit more talent, guys standing out on the center spot, especially developmentally. And I think Zabel is somebody who maybe he's worked himself into the top 40, top 50, but I think if he falls to the Broncos round 2, you're going to have a strong conversation about him for the Broncos. So I'm really happy that he stood out for the Broncos. As far as the American team, I really wanted to ask Scott about this because we're both very interested in trench play. And I think pick 20 overall, your defensive line is probably the most interesting. I see you here, Scott, if you want to jump back in to see if it'll work for you. But I think that the interior defensive line in this class, especially on the American team, has some real standouts. Walter Nolan came in with a lot of hype as well. Of course, I know that a lot of people I liked coming into the season too. Deion Walker from Kentucky. I don't really think I see Deion Walker being a first round pick. He's pretty light in below the belt, which is a concern for me for somebody that plays defensive line. And when he plays the rush, I feel like he stands up immediately out of his stance, which for somebody who's 6'7", that's a limiting factor. Leverage guys, low man wins. So I worry a lot about Deion Walker for that position. Now I think he can be a 4-5 technique, but I don't love him in as a 0 or 1. So nose tackle versus defensive end. And I don't know, guys. I don't know if I see him as a fit for Denver. The guys who really stood out for me for the Broncos on the interior defensive line, though, is Walter Nolan. I love Walter Nolan, former super recruit coming out, was part of that crazy recruiting class for Texas A&M. So that is awesome. We'll see how that plays out. And I think that he's one who could rise up above Denver's pick. Sorry, trying to see if Scott's going to hop on or not. But I really like Walter Nolan. I've been kind of concerned that I've seen him mocked lower in big boards and stuff by people whose eye I trust, which to me, I don't know, like obvious talent is obvious sometimes, especially in the trenches. So I'm almost wondering if there's something on the background there with him. I don't know that for sure, but it's just his tape to me looks like a top 10, top 15 kind of athlete. And I just do not exactly see him mocked there very often. So we'll see how it plays out. Hotel Internet's having issues. So guys, it's going to be Nick Kendell solo show talking a little bit more about what he heard from the Senior Bowl today. So had to give a shout out to one of my favorites in this class, Walter Nolan. I've just been a big fan of him overall. Again, talking tight ends. I saw somebody in here in the chat mentioned Cecil Lammey said Fannin could sneak into the first round. Love Cecil. Great guy. I mean, just is a really nice guy. And I respect his eye and everything too. I don't know what he's hearing down there. I'm very not about Harold Fannin Jr. for Denver or just in general. I mean, if you have a small tight end, that is probably almost essentially going to live detached from the line of scrimmage because he cannot function in line, in my opinion. Why not just take the wide receiver at that point? I mean, you're drafting him as a wide receiver, and I don't think he moves like a wide receiver. I feel like teams get burned by those kind of guys. So I'm not a Harold Fannin Jr. guy for Denver, but we will see how it works out for him. Worth keeping an eye on going forward, though. Again, plant my flag. I've been wrong before. We'll see. As far as continuing on the guys who are standing out here, Denver is first round, second round. I know everybody's running back and tight end heavy, but I thought there were a few wide receivers today from what I heard that stood out as well that I've had my eye on as well. So I was kind of bummed out that Erick Trickel from Stanford backed out of the Senior Bowl. I think he'd have had a chance to really rise in the process. Keep an eye out for him day 2. If he tests well, I mean, he could even go round 1, but he blocks his butt off. Really like him. Similar, talking about a wide receiver who can block as well as Fannin, but be a better athlete. I think Erick Trickel's in that mold. Another guy who I think inside-outside ability, not an overwhelming athlete, but really good at the catch point. I mean, I watch him and I see Eric Decker, which is a positive. You're talking a day 2 guy. Eric Decker got a big contract. He was a good wide receiver for Denver. I think Beck is somebody who really stands out for me. He had a good day today. Shout out to Jack Beck. Also, his brother passed away he was slain in the New Orleans terrorist attack on January 1st, 31st. So dealing with a lot, heavy heart there, but I really like Beck. Inside, outside ability. He's talented. So hopefully he's somebody Denver can keep an open mind to and watch for. Maybe he'll work himself out of Denver's range. Another guy I really like coming into the season had the fortunate but maybe unfortunate reality of working with Spencer Petras after transferring from Iowa. We got Mile High Huddle coming in here. Says, sorry, MHH. The Hilton Hotel Wi-Fi right now is not good. It's not allowing Scott to click into the show. We're working on it. Well, that's okay. We're hanging out here. I see Eric's in the chat as well. You will have to – oh, my gosh. I Dream of Jeannie. How are you doing, Eric? Good to see you.
Doing good.
All right.
Was listening because, I'm not there at the Senior Bowl and wanted to hear Scott's thoughts, but I did watch it and, saw the internet issues, figured I could jump in and help you since I do have some insights on these guys as well.
Yeah. So the other guy, so first we were talking wide receivers here. Somebody that I liked a lot coming into, just over the last couple months, I watched him. I tweeted out a week ago, I'm like, this is so Eric Decker cast type here, but Beck from TCU, Decker did a really good job. He was never explosive, but really good route runner for the size, had some inside outside ability as well, physical at the catch point, and a pretty good blocker. I really like Beck. I don't think he's going to end up being a good wide receiver 1 in the league, but he's going to be very useful, and he brings he's not going to confuse anybody for a tight end, but he's a blocker as a wide receiver as well, which if Sean Payton is going to be screen-oriented, running back, pass game-oriented, your wide receivers have to be bouncers out there. Get this, out the club. You need to have the wide receivers with that mentality out there. So I think Beck brings that, and he had a good day today.
Yeah, he had a really good catch. He climbed the ladder against tight coverage, came down with it, and yeah, he was pretty impressive. I liked what he did in some of the one-on-ones I saw. Of course, watching it through NFL Network, not able to catch every single rep they had, but there was another play in team drills as well that he just looked good. I don't think he was targeted, but he could have been because he got open, and he's a wide receiver I haven't watched a lot of tape of yet, but he definitely made a nice first impression with what I saw of the Senior Bowl today.
I know a lot of people really like Savion Williams, his counterpart, who's a really fun, big athlete. He's got a long ways to go as a route runner. I don't think he's got very dependable hands, but he's somebody that you can scheme touches for. But when I watched TCU, went in to watch Savion Williams because, big athlete, does some wildcat quarterback stuff too. Beck just kept catching my eyes. He wins in NFL ways, which I always appreciated. You don't have to specifically, you already have Marvin Mims here. You're going to have the wide receiver check down, dump down option. I don't really want wide receivers that you have to scheme touches for in the offense. I want people who can be passive options in the progression of the drop back game. And I think Beck can bring that a lot. Somebody who does a little bit of both as well that I want to get your opinion on. I don't know how much you've heard or talked about him, but Jalen Royals from Utah State, injured early this season, a lot of touchdowns 2 years ago, and some explosive plays out there as well. I heard he had a pretty good standout day as well down in Mobile.
Yeah, I didn't get to see any of his one-on-one drills, but somebody on the broadcast, somebody put out a clip of it on Twitter of every single one of them. And yeah, his releases were clean and consistent. The footwork was also clean. You didn't see all this extra wasted movement there off the snap to get off to get away. You didn't see these TikTok routes from him. And he was just smooth, clean, and consistent, which is, in this situation, in these one-on-one drills, that's wins almost every single time. And yeah, he's another one that this was my first impression on. I haven't done a lot on the wide receivers.
Yeah, Denver is definitely going to be looking at wide receivers. I think it'd be pretty shocking just where the room is at right now, not to add somebody. And I see there's a lot of conversation in here about somebody who lost day 1, but stood out today, apparently in Tez Johnson, the adopted brother of Bo Nix, Oregon player. Obviously came in at 5'9", 156, which I went into Mock Draftable's database, and 156. So this is him probably trying to put on weight to perform at this. Out of the 1,084 wide receivers weighed at the combine dating back to 2003, he would be tied for the third lightest wide receiver out of 1,000, 0th percentile. So this is, like we say small, he's historically small for the wide receiver. And he's also, I mean, if you're even going to go by that, like he's not like 5'7", 156, where he's a little bit more compact, right? He's like 5'9", 156. So I really worry about the size. But won today in a lot of quick stuff, not shocking for his size. I just feel like, I don't know, another depth wide receiver, very slot specific, probably 10, 11 personnel based, heavy, not special teams, not blocking. I see a route for him day 3 for Denver, potentially, but that's something where it's like, okay, Troy Franklin or Tez Johnson, you already have one here. I don't know if I need another small wide receiver that offers no blocking or special teams.
I mean, I think you could get something out of him as a returner on special teams, but not much. And
you already have Mims. Like, let's say.
Yeah, but you already have Mims. It's just doubling down on that. And then with what you want to do on the offense, you have Mims and Troy Franklin that kind of fill and do what Tez Johnson would bring to it, even though Troy Franklin's a little bit taller and bigger. But talking about his size, we talked about this in our group chat. He's the same size as Lance Sanderson. And and having stood next to Lance, he is a small guy. Just imagining somebody of that size playing the NFL, there is a lot of concern with it. But as you said, late day 3, round 6, round 7, he can offer some explosive ability, can come in and compete for this explosive, role for this offense that, you can never have enough explosives on offense. There's a path for him, but I can also see another team being like, we love what he brings, and taking him a little bit earlier than that as well on day 3. I don't think it goes day 2 or day 1, of course. But.
Again, and I saw somebody in here mention Jarrell Worthy, not Jarrell, is it Xavier Worthy? He was 10 pounds heavier at the combine and broke the 40 record. If Tez comes in here and runs a 4.2 flat, I mean, then we'll have a different conversation. And he's fast, but I don't think he's more like, I feel like he's more like beating guys with space. It's like the Tank Dell kind of conversation with him rather than the Worthy one. And I don't think, again, he's interesting player for sure. I just don't know if like it makes sense for Sean Payton. I think we're trying to get a little bit bigger, heavier, like, going from him in the slot versus Lil Jordan Humphrey. I mean, just completely different skill set, usage role. I think you're looking for probably a little bit more of a Lil Jordan Humphrey replacement than a Troy Franklin replacement on this roster. So yeah, it's, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him, but that we're talking historically small, 5th percentile hand size as well. He's an outlier, and you can bet on outliers every once in a while, but you can't make a habit of it when you build a team.
And I will say, talking about the 40 time doing it and what Xavier Worthy did and setting the record and everything, they do those interviews, those like video interviews with all these guys, and Tez Johnson was sitting there hitting that he's going to break it, but every year we always have these guys that we're breaking the 40 record, and they come out and run a 4.42 or a 4.34 or whatever. But to take the thing to the other event here that's going on this week real quick, if you want a smaller receiver that does bring something different to the offense that you don't need, there's a guy out of Eastern Washington at the Shrine Week who had an absolute amazing week.
Chisholm.
Chisholm. I can't remember his first name. Absolutely killed it. Just so clean and consistent with his routes. Just so snappy with them. Like, he was able to get instant separation because he could snap his routes off. And every single day watching, going through his practices, I was sending clips in the group chat. I think every single practice I sent 1 or 2 clips of his into our group chat because he just looked so good every single time.
One thing I love about that too is that Mel Kiper gave him a shout out like a week before you mentioned him as well. So Kiper, he's not always going to get it right or wrong, but he's doing the work, right? So appreciate the Godfather here. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing without him. So got to pay those respects. Keeping it forward here. Any other standouts? I mean, I already had the Deion Walker conversation here. I don't know. I mean, I wanted to love him. He's a fun player. Like when you watch him wearing that 0, that big player, some cleanup sacks here. I love that. He's so big that he can engulf guys trying to climb the pocket. But I mean, you see him in person, close up. He's got a weird build. I don't want to do that hashtag bad build. So what a bad body build. But he's
Odd
really
build.
light below the belt, which I do not love for my defensive tackles. And also, I wish he was more explosive forward. I feel like he just pops up out of his stance, which at 6'7", no, not acceptable. I mean, he'll still go somewhere, probably between pick, if I was guessing, 60 to 100, unless there's character stuff here. That's kind of where I value it. And he's so big, that's a unique skill set, but he looks like more like a 2-gapper 5 technique to me without the penetrating ability. We're looking at totally different skill sets in Denver's defense.
And with him, you mentioned the pad level and everything, and in the one-on-ones, he just consistently popped up. Here's a snap, and he is standing basically straight up. But in the team drills, he had an amazing rep where he just stayed low and walked the center back, pacing Jalen Milroe, the Alabama quarterback, in his handoff. I mean, they were right there in that drop back as he just walked him back, stayed low, stayed compact. And at his size and with the power that he does have, when he stays low, you see magic happen. It's just that happens one every 20 snaps, if not more than that. It's just no consistency to it. And he is a guy who, I will say that watching him this season, he did look like he had a bad bod, play on dad bod, that heavy, that shaky gut. I guess is another way to put it. That did.
I mean, I have it too, but I'm not trying to make millions in the NFL.
I will say that didn't look like the case today. It looked like that he did work to, cut down on the body fat a little bit. But still, that was rough. And for the big guys too, and this also goes back to talking about small guys. I have to mention Cameron Jackson, 6'6", 340 pounds, out of Florida. There were 2 reps where he went against Willie Lampkin, an interior offensive lineman out of North Carolina, who is 5'10", 270 pounds. David versus Goliath, and they actually split the reps. The first one, Jackson won easily, and then the second one, Lampkin won easily. And that was just something that's really funny to me, just how that worked out.
That is funny. Just keeping it going here. Obviously, running backs really not that interesting in the Senior Bowl. A bunch of like Scatterbo backed out. I saw that the UCLA linebacker backed out as well, unfortunately. So that's the day before a bunch of guys back out. It is unfortunate, but we're looking, running back, tight end, wide receiver, defensive line. I think those are the spots at the Senior Bowl. There's some value there, but center as well. Did you see anybody on the offensive line size besides Zabel, or if you want to talk about Zabel as well? I know he had a heck of a day. I wouldn't have any issue. Like Wattenberg's a serviceable player, right? But he's 1 year left. And if you have ability to really round out the offensive line with a cost control piece, I don't think people pay a center. I don't want to have 5 paid guys on the offensive line. I don't think that's good math. But Zabel, day 2 for Denver, or are you just maybe it's more of a later developmental position for Denver?
I mean, I would take it. He had a couple reps at guard as well. I mean, he's a guy who just didn't quite meet the threshold you look for to play tackle in the NFL, despite playing that at North Dakota State. Obviously going to move inside, and he killed it. He looked natural at guard. I think that was his first rep, or at least it was the first rep I saw. And then he was at center for the rest of it, and he looked natural there as well. And as for other guys on the interior, there are multiple small school guys at the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl, to give a shout out to that since I have access to the practice tape for that, who stood out. I want to say Sacramento State, Jackson Slater, I think is his name. He looked really good in what I saw. And then there is I want to say Arkansas State, Clay Webb, I believe is the name.
Yeah.
Who also looked really good in practices today. I was listening in earlier because I wanted to hear Scott's thoughts, and he mentioned some miscues between the center and quarterback exchange. I didn't get to see a lot of those because of the broadcast. And I did notice there was one of Webb. But with what I was able to see of them, those are all guys that looked good. And I'm with you. I mean, if you can upgrade Wattenberg with the cost control guy for the next 4 years, then I'm all for it. Even if it does take, means Zabel in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Yeah, I think that center guard backup position, developmental center, is a big long-term need on this team. And it's something that the draft, especially when you get further and further from the first pick, you need to be looking ahead to the health of the roster. So that's one to call out. The other one for me is probably that slot position. Now, McMillan's interesting. I think we saw it in preseason. They had a few reps with him at safety. And I think sometimes the lack of speed on crossers specifically can really hurt him. But he's a pretty good alley defender, I think, in run defense. So I do think that there's the ability to maybe move him to safety. Maybe you move Moss to safety. So cornerback, anybody stand out for you today? Cornerback, safety, secondary. It's obviously a spot. You can never have enough. And Denver's probably set there for 2025, just at the makeup of the team at cornerback specifically. But you do have two movable pieces, which gives you options.
Yeah, there were a couple guys that stood out. I'm trying to remember their names. Upton Stout, I think is his name. And I can't remember what school he's from. He looked pretty good in the few reps that I did see of him. And then there's the Florida State kid, Thomas.
Yeah.
He had a couple good reps as well. And there was another one too, but I can't remember school or name for the other one that looked pretty good today from what I saw.
Okay, some guys that I was interested in that came out, Mac Williams, Mick Williams from UCF. From what I saw, I liked some of what he did out there. I know Trey Amos, guy played at UL Lafayette to Alabama to Ole Miss. Ole Miss paid for a heck of a team this year not to make a playoff, but no, he had a pretty good time out there. Maxwell, I believe is the other name, the cornerback for Kentucky, and Louisville's Kentucky. Hairston, there we go. That's the one. But I thought Louisville's cornerback also looked pretty darn good out there as well. He intrigued me. I thought he had pretty good click and close. He stayed in phase pretty well. So we'll see what happens with Damari Mathis, Chris Abrams drained, but cornerback's another spot. It's not immediate for Denver, but something that I'm interested for the Broncos potentially looking at. It feels more of like a 2026 primary potential need, depending on what happens with Moss and McMillan. But if somebody falls that you love, like let's say you're picking there at 52 and we're like, wow, we got a early second grade on this guy. And by that point, you're going to be probably talking about a lot of round 3 grade guys. We have to take him. It's good process to do that. So we'll keep an eye out for that as well for Denver, and just a lot of fluidity with those pieces. Cody W says any safeties or linebackers. Excuse me, still getting over a cold here. Talked about it to start the show. Linebacker is so freaking hard because you're talking about one-on-one drills where guys have two-way goes and linebackers like inherently have help / need help. So you're asking the guys to just primarily play in cover, and that's knowing what the assignment is without having to decipher if it's going to be a run or not and what the run fit looks like. So like for me, these drills, like you can take little pieces here, like the fluidity in space, the twitch, the click and close in space, some of that you can see. But for linebackers and running backs, I just think it's probably, you're going to get the absolute least amount of usable information in these type of drills, in my opinion, from those two positions.
Yeah. I heard you and Scott talking about this earlier, and there's some things you can take away from them, but again, it comes down to being willing to hit. And with safety, there actually was a safety on the American team out of Wisconsin who he was not afraid to hit. And at one point on the broadcast, you could hear one of the coaches yelling at him to knock it off because he hit the running back like 2 or 3 times out of a sequence of plays. And another safety that I didn't notice, but has been getting a lot of praise is Billy Bowman Jr. out of Oklahoma. I've seen a lot of heck with the size. This kid can play, and I guess he made a really big play today. And the corner that I was talking about was Dante Trader Jr. out of Maryland. This dude was recruited to be a lacrosse player and then switched over to football. And he's an athlete that's still learning the position, but he has a pretty good technical foundation with his footwork. To start to continue building on. And he's an interesting guy. You know, you talked about cornerback not being a need this year, but kicking the can down the road. Well, here's a developmental guy that you can, try to raise the floor in the room. And then maybe, a year or 2 from now, because he has some inside outside versatility. And the Wisconsin safety is Hunter Wohler, I think is how you pronounce his last name.
Interesting. Well, we'll keep an eye on him because he was probably recruited by Broncos pass game coordinator / right-hand man to Vance Joseph and oh my gosh, name's escaping me. Leonard.
Jim Leonard.
Yep. Yeah. So keep an eye out for that. That sounds like a guy who is jonesing for a special teams role in the very least. You can never have enough guys who love to hit in football. It's a violent game, and you better play violently, especially if you're two things are non-negotiable for me when I'm watching guys: defensive backs tackling and wide receiver / tight ends blocking and running backs. If you're not going to have that, then I'm not going to be as interested in you because you're not, as selfless as a player, and you're not bringing that mentality. So that's my thought on the safety and linebackers there and just some of those guys standing out. Any more thoughts, Eric?
He was recruited by Jim Leonard. I mean, there was just a 2-year crossover there, but yeah, there is some there. I was kind of curious about it. And then it's going off, and it just came to me. You were talking about Mason Taylor earlier, since there was somebody that brought up tight ends. He is the son of Hall of Famer Jason Taylor and the nephew of Hall of Fame linebacker Zach Thomas. And he is probably the smoothest athlete that I've seen at tight end for a while. Like Brock Bowers was smooth, and Brock Bowers did a lot of other things great, but Mason Taylor just looks so consistent. And then the Miami tight end Arroyo, he also is very smooth for a tight end for their size.
Yeah, both those guys going to be day 2 prospects, potentially taken. I think it was Dane Brugler had Mason Taylor going to the Broncos with their 2nd round pick, and his mock with Ashton Genty going first.
And Daniel Jeremiah had Mason Taylor, I think, as his 33rd prospect in his top 50 board that came out today.
Worth keeping an eye on. Some guys going to keep some more eyes on tomorrow. Didn't hear too much about him today with Terrence Ferguson. He's big. I wish he was a little bit better blocker, but Oregon, he's interesting. LaQuint Allen from Syracuse. I like a lot of what he does out of the backfield. He's put up just insane stats for the Orange. So he's one who stands out for me. And then the running back from SMU, we're looking for more of the pass catching back. The running back from SMU, his name's escaping me right now. He caught a heck of a lot of balls in his day as well. He's one who stands out. I think he's on
I'm trying to pull it up. Brashard Smith.
Yes.
And I was pulled away when they were talking about him, so I didn't get to see what he did. But Daniel Jeremiah and Davis, they started talking about him, and they were talking about, if you want a pass catcher out of the backfield, this is the guy that you really want to watch. Yeah. And they just had nothing but praise for him. I haven't watched him yet, and I didn't get to see any. I don't recall seeing any of his reps today. And of course, running backs are so hard to evaluate, but he is one for that pass catching guy out of the backfield. One to keep an eye on.
What you can evaluate for running backs, some pass protection, although running backs, their awareness is so important because it's like you have to be a part of the whole system to have that. And it's hard to do without, multiple days, weeks of install to get that, to judge the awareness on that. But the pass catching stuff, are they moving out there? Would you be confused by that running back's reps as a wide receiver? We might have something there then. So keep an eye on those guys. But guys, time to get on out of here. We appreciate Eric hopping in. I had a feeling Scott's internet would, do whatever the bed. So it did. And here we are. So thanks, Eric, for jumping in here. Eric's going to be joining me again tomorrow morning too. We might probably run a mock draft. Haven't done too many of those, so we can talk through some of the process. And Eric and I are both hard-headed, so we'll see how that goes. But it'll be a lot of fun. You guys can join us again tomorrow morning. Want to give a shout-out to all of our star givers today. A lot of them: Michael Ronquillo coming in, Phil McLaughlin, Cody W., a lot. Papa Bear, good to see you. Denver Luke, you're awesome. You guys killing it today. Make sure you're following Eric and I on Twitter. Eric is at Erick Trickel. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also, make sure you guys are following us at Mile High Huddle. Of course, we're also over at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share. Eric, final thoughts before we wrap it up and get on out of here. Yeah, we got to people talking. Amanda Worry from South Carolina, who Daniel Jeremiah mocked to Denver at 20. Well, plenty of time to talk some of those first rounders. Amanda Worry's interesting player, big athlete.
Yeah, if you guys haven't done so, I have an article up about some takeaways from the Senior Bowl practice today, and I have articles coming up about the Shrine Bowl and the practices that are going on there. And I got to tell you, want to talk about defensive linemen? The Shrine Bowl has the defensive linemen stealing the show. They have been absolutely killing the offensive line over there.
It's a good defensive line class. Obviously, the guy from Maryland really stands out, and CJ West from Indiana. It's a good nose tackle crop this season, which makes me curious if you're going to see maybe less market for somebody like DJ Jones or Puna Ford. Maybe Denver could get them back one of those guys for cheap to kind of fill those things in. I don't know. We'll see. Sometimes when there's a lot of options in the draft, teams can lowball and short term some of those guys in free agency. So we'll see. It's going to be fascinating to follow.
Yeah. So make sure you guys go check that out. And as Nick said, I'll be on in the morning with him, and then Friday night, Kenneth Booker and we will be focusing and talking about just the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl, both of them, as they both finish their practices up. Shrine Bowl today, Senior Bowl tomorrow, or Thursday. Sorry. So let's talk.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. We'll see all you guys again tomorrow morning. Appreciate you. Have a good one. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos. Oh, we got one more. Thoughts on the 49ers secondary from the early 2010s, late 2000s. Man, I remember Deshaun Golston. I remember Shante Spencer. Man, Caleb, you're asking me. I don't watch much 49ers, but I remember Golston. And, man, you're talking about I played Madden with those guys for sure. But that was an non-memorable 49ers era. That might have been Singleton or Mike Nolan or – was not Tom Sula yet, but 49ers have been in a better position since then, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Nate Clements, but that's because of Madden. He's a guy that whenever he hit free agency, I'd always go out and try to sign. But off the top of my head, I don't remember watching them a whole lot. That was just a little bit before I got into football to the degree I'm at now.
Yeah. Well, appreciate the super chat, Caleb. Sorry, I wish you had a little bit more. We can ask about draft prospects. We'll get into it. But again, we're going to get out of here. I heard a baby screaming for the last 30 minutes, so I'm sure I'm very much wanted upstairs. Appreciate everyone. Have a good rest of your night. Go Broncos.